Well, it's precisely 8 o'clock, and to respect all of your time and that of our audience, I think we are ready to start. It is being recorded, and I'm going to hand over the reins to Gideon Harbour.
Super. Thank you, Esther. Okay, well, welcome everyone. Good evening. Welcome to this Ben-Gurion University event. The backdrop to this evening, as unfortunately with everything at the moment, is the tragic and frankly heartbreaking events in the Ukraine. The West's response to date has been largely humanitarian, material, and to a large degree sanctions-based. And in that, financial sanctions are to a large degree the front line. Alongside the terrible physical violence, there's also a parallel cyber war that's being waged, both for people's hearts and minds, and for sabotage and control of systems and financial systems amongst the most targeted.
This is Gideon.
Yeah, good evening, Anne. So the topic of this evening is cybersecurity. I'm Gideon Harbour, a trustee of the BGU Trust in the UK, an investor in technology, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all. It's well known that Israel is one of the leading centres globally for cybersecurity. It produces global quality research and development, hosts development centres for many of the big tech names, has a great entrepreneurial culture, produces numerous NASDAQ-listed companies, is a centre for academic excellence. But what's less well known is that BGU actually plays a central role in this, in Israel's cybersecurity ecosystem. Just last week, Israel hosted Cybertech Tel Aviv conference with over 10,000 attendees, numerous keynotes from, amongst others, the head of US Homeland Security, the head of cybersecurity for the UAE. Magnificent to see both of those people speaking together in Israel. Numerous senior government officials from around the world, Fortune 1000 security leads, and so forth. BGU was actually a co-founder of the conference, and our guest speaker this evening from BGU, Professor Yuval Elovici, who's head of the Innovation Cybersecurity Research Center, was one of the keynote speakers. Physically, BGU sits also at the nexus of Israel's cyber complex of military, business, and academia. And it may be hard to believe for those who aren't born digital natives, but over the past 30, 40 years, tech has moved from something of a helpful set of tools for people to a profoundly interlinked infrastructure that is behind pretty much all of our day-to-day activities. And when that infrastructure stops, the functioning of a society also largely stops. So what are the risks there? How are we managing these? What are the technical angles, the legal angles? Our panel this evening is here to address those questions and your questions too. So I'd like to extend our thanks to Professor Elovici, to David Klein, co-founder of One Peak Partners, a leading tech growth PE fund, and Lawson Casely, our moderator for this evening, a partner in White & Case's global commercial litigation practice, and a member of the firm's London tech disputes team. And with that, Lawson, can I hand over to you?
Great. Thank you very much, Gideon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. So yes, as Gideon said, I am a partner in White & Case's London office. I sit in the commercial litigation practice, but over the past 8 or so years, I have spent an increasing amount of my time helping clients across all sectors to deal with cyber attacks and data breaches. So in terms of the kind of stuff I do, I tend to help clients deal with issues such as civil remedies when there is a breach. Often the best way to protect the organisation can actually be by going to court and getting an emergency injunction or issues like that. I help with regulatory reporting and liaison. So obviously, to the extent personal data has been compromised, there'll be reporting obligations to data protection authorities. There may also be reporting obligations to other regulators, for example, financial regulators, depending upon the industry that the client is in. There will inevitably be an internal investigation to find out exactly what happened, and potentially a regulatory investigation with a regulator mandating that or directing it. So I conduct those. The criminal authorities, to the extent they are involved, I will help clients report to and liaise with them. There is obviously increasing scope these days for potential follow-on litigation in relation to any breach. So I help clients deal with that. I also help on the crisis management side, and that is not just PR. but there is also increasing shareholder and market pressure generally when an organisation is hit with a cyber breach. And finally, these incidents are often multi-jurisdictional in nature, and so a big part of what I do typically is actually coordinating all those elements I just talked about across jurisdictions. So my perspective is very, very much on the practical side of handling cyber breaches and steps that companies can take to limit the damage and potential liability. And I hope that between us this evening, and between Professor Yuval Elvici, David Klein, and me, we actually will bring quite a few different angles and facets to some of the issues we will be looking at. So with that introduction from me, let me introduce you more fully to Professor Elvici. Yuval is a computer scientist. He is a professor in the Department of Software and Information Systems Engineering at BGU. He is also the head of the Cybersecurity Research Center at BGU, and also the director of Telecom Innovation Laboratories and the Fujitsu Cyber Lab. In addition to his roles at BGU, Yuval also serves as the lab director at Singapore University of Technology and Design's Cybersecurity Laboratory, as well as the research director of iTrust. And as if all that wasn't enough, in 2014, he co-founded Morphisec, a startup company that developed cybersecurity mechanisms related to moving target defense. So Yuval, I feel like my first question to you should actually be, how on earth do you fit all that in? You must get up very early in the morning. But seriously, based on your very wide-ranging experience and knowledge, could you perhaps share with us some of your key thoughts and insights into the issue we're looking at today, namely the vulnerability of AI systems and companies generally to cyber attacks?
Yes, actually, I believe that in the future, attackers are going to focus on the AI component of many systems. AI is really a major component in many systems today, and attackers will try to focus on the AI component in order to achieve their goals. Maybe I will give a short presentation showing actually what we did in BGU. With that regard, it will help us to understand actually what is the risk. Can the host allow me to share?
Of course.
Yes. Okay, I will try now, not yet.
Okay, this is my bad. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to allow you to share. I think you have that ability. So.
Host disabled participants. Cybersecurity works perfectly now.
There you go. Always expect the unexpected.
Yes.
Here we go.
Okay, I can share now. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfectly. As you will see later on, you will understand why I insisted in having a presentation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the AI security in general. AI and cybersecurity, there are three intersection points between AI and cybersecurity. First of all, AI in the hands of defenders, which we know many cybersecurity products are based on AI. AI in the hands of attackers. I will give you later on several examples how attackers actually can use AI to do a more sophisticated cyber attack. And there is the issue of security of AI. And this is going to be the main focus of my short presentation here. Now, is AI naive? Actually, artificial intelligence is embedded in many applications, but most AI advancements are being developed based on a positive worldview. In other words, the designer of a system based on AI assume that all the data is going to come in front of the AI system with good faith. However, adversaries will try to misuse the implemented AI algorithm for their own purposes. And I'm going to give you several very convincing examples to show you how actually AI can be compromised in order to give a huge advantage to the attackers. Now, there is a topic called adversarial AI attacks. Adversarial AI attacks, it's a type of attack where the attacker is trying to change a bit the input to the AI system in a way that is going to make a major change in the decision of the AI system with regard to the input. There are two ways how to do that. Either to add a small perturbation to the input such that the AI system will give the wrong judgment concerning the data, or to try to poison the training set that is being used to induce a model. And then the model is not accurate, and then it's going to give some kind of an advantage to the attacker. So maybe this description doesn't give you any real insight about what is the meaning of an adversarial attack, but I'm going to use examples from 3 different cases. First of all, adversarial learning meets cybersecurity. As you know, many cybersecurity solutions today are based on AI. For example, anomaly detection algorithms, next generation antivirus tools, fraud detection, intrusion detection systems, all of them are cybersecurity solutions that are based on AI. Now, what will happen if the attacker is going to focus its attack exactly on the AI components of these security solutions? Give you one example. Let's assume that the attacker wants to fool a network intrusion detection system. What the attacker may try to do, he may try to reshape the traffic of the attack in such a way that the AI algorithm will not be able to detect that actually there is a cyber attack in the network itself. So how the attacker can actually do that? What the attacker can actually do is using AI to learn what is the benign network traffic in the network. For example, there is a bank. The attacker managed to compromise the bank network, and he has some kind of a probe that can monitor the network traffic in the bank. What the attacker will do, he will try to train a model, a deep learning model, for example, an LSTM, that its goal is to try to learn what is the behavior of the legitimate traffic in the network of the bank. Then, when the attacker would want to launch an attack in the network of the bank, he's going to change the malicious traffic in such a way that it will mimic the legitimate traffic behavior. So if the attack is mimicking the legitimate traffic behavior, and this is done using AI, the intrusion detection system will not be able to detect the presence of the attack in the network. Actually, what we are doing here, we are using deep fake technique to mimic the benign network traffic in such a way that the malicious traffic will not raise any alert in the system. So in this case, we are using AI to fool an AI algorithm in the network of the bank. Another example is adversarial learning meets video analytics. Here I'm going to give you two very cool examples. In the first example, we have, for example, here a car. You know, a car like Tesla, they have cameras, and the cameras can detect different objects. For example, a stop sign. And in the case of a Tesla, the Tesla will stop if they are going to see a stop sign. Now, what we did, we used AI to design this patch. You can see here this patch. It looks very, very strange to you, but this patch was designed that if you place the patch on a camera, the object detector, the AI algorithm that try to learn or try to analyze the picture of the camera will not be able to identify only one type of object, stop sign. Any other type of object is going to be detected. As you can see here, the bus is being detected very, very easily, but a stop sign is not detected anymore. So if I'm going to place such a patch at night on cameras of a Tesla car, then when the car is going to drive, and if the driver is going to activate autopilot, the car will not be able to detect anymore the stop sign. So in this case, we used AI to attack the AI system in the car and to prevent it from identifying a stop sign. But let me show you a more relevant use case for today. You know, today we are still, at least in Israel, still using masks because of the COVID-19. Now, camera surveillance systems can detect an individual even if it's wearing a mask. But what will happen if we are going to use AI to carefully craft a mask that its goal is to hide the identity of the individual? So let me show you here in BGU, we conducted the experiment to evaluate the algorithm. We see we are using different type of standard masks, different masks with different patterns. And as you can see here, this participant was enrolled as a terrorist, and she is detected with every type of standard mask that she is wearing. But we used AI to design a special mask that the goal of this mask is actually to hide, to dodge the system in a way that the camera surveillance system will not detect her anymore. You can see the same with this PhD student. He is detected with any kind of mask, any type of mask that he's wearing, it can be easily detected as a terrorist. But if he's wearing the adversarial mask that we designed using an AI algorithm, we can fool the AI algorithm and he is not detected anymore. Just to show you a final demonstration, using our mask, this participant is unknown. And please note, his face is enrolled as a terrorist in the system. Again, the same mask that she is wearing, again, the system cannot identify her anymore, and she is unknown. So in this case, we used AI to fool an AI system. To conclude my short presentation, what happens when adversarial learning meets finance? Where finance is using AI, for example, in credit score algorithm. So in this case, what we did, we took a credit score algorithm, we analyzed the features that are being used by this algorithm to determine whether a specific user is supposed to get a loan or not. And then we took users that the algorithm flags them as people that are not going to return the loan, so it recommends the bank not to give them the loan. And then we looked what a small perturbation the user can do about his profile in a way that is going to fool the credit score algorithm and is still going to get the loan, even though he is not supposed to get the loan. Of course, a person is not going to change his gender to get a loan, or is not going to change his age because he cannot fool his age. But for example, if he has a specific type of money credit that he can use per month, we discovered that in many algorithms, if you are reducing the usage of the credit to less than 40%, you can fool the AI algorithm and you are going to get the loan when actually you're not supposed to get the loan. So in this case, adversarial AI techniques were used to recommend users how to change their profile in a way that the bank will give them the loan, and eventually they're not going to return the money and the bank is going to lose a lot of money. Let's conclude my introduction to the domain of adversarial AI in its usage in different domains.
That's absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Yuval. I'm sure there'll be many questions on that. One question I had, and it's just idle interest, what was it about the masks? Was there a particular feature of the masks that stopped the systems recognizing them? Because to the naked eye, they look quite similar to some of the other masks that the systems can see through.
Actually, it's an algorithm that you start with a completely white mask, and then there is a mathematical algorithm that computes the gradients, which pixel, which color you are adding to the mask in a way that will make the face of the person with the white mask as far as possible to his real identity. And the algorithm automatically created this feature that actually looks like a nose and eye and so on, but everything was done completely automatically by the algorithm itself in order to make the person with the mask as far as possible from his own identity.
Well, fascinating. Well, look, we're going to come back to some of the issues you covered in the questions. But before that, I wanted to introduce everybody more fully to David Klein. David is a co-founder, a managing partner of One Peak Partners, which is a specialist investment firm focusing on the technology sector in Europe. And in that role, David has extensive board and investment experience in a wide range of tech companies, including the likes of Stryker Systems and PandaDog. Prior to One Peak, David was a senior investment professional at growth equity fund Summit Partners, where he was responsible for tech investments across Europe and Israel. He also led growth investments at Morgan Stanley Principal Investments in Europe and Israel, having started his career in the TMT group at Morgan Stanley in London and Sao Paulo. So, David, you have a huge amount of experience in investing in and managing tech companies. To start off, could you perhaps share with us some of your key thoughts and perspectives in relation to AI security and the risk of cyber attacks?
Yeah, Lawson, thanks a lot for the intro. Much appreciated. I did not prepare such a great presentation as you all did. But in terms of giving you a little bit of background on what we're seeing in the market and just the sheer size of what is happening. So the security software market is a $55 billion annual market that's growing at around 11% year on year. So it's a fast-growing market that is already very sizable. And that is a market that in the last couple of years has been very impacted. If you just look at the number of cyber attacks in 2021, they've grown 105% over 2020. And if you look at cyber attacks that included ransomware attacks, they have gone up 19x year on year in 2021 versus 2020. And I think either was you, Lawson, or Gideon in the beginning that mentioned the war in Ukraine and Russia and the cyber attacks that came hand in hand with that. That is something that we're seeing increasingly also on the corporate side of things. That companies just need to be protected, and that's always one of our key areas that we spend our time on when we diligence a company, because that risk seems to have gone up very massively over the last couple of years. So maybe I start out with that, and in general, when it comes to companies that we look at and we spend time on from a diligence perspective, what we care about is that they have a full cybersecurity stack in place. They also make sure that the security posture is tested on a periodic basis, ideally on a continuous basis. There was also one of the key reasons why we at One Peak invested in the business called Simulate that does continuous security validation software and allows to use penetration testing on a continuous basis to ensure that everything in your security stack works, and that is becoming more and more relevant. And maybe a last data point also for the audience here, when it comes to cyber insurance, that's also a very interesting market. What we're seeing there is that over the last few years, lots of insurance companies have gone into that market, have underwritten policies without really having a great amount of data around cyber insurance, and now are seeing what the claims are and have built that back book of data. And we're seeing those premiums go up by 3 to 4x currently on cyber insurances. So all this to say, this is a market that is growing very massively, and that is a market that I think we'll hear a lot more of in the coming years.
That's really interesting, David. And just on the cyber insurance point, I mean, that's a really interesting, question that I get a lot. Is it the case when you're investing in a company, do you, almost insist that it has cyber insurance? Do you view it actually now we're at the stage of if a company does not have cyber insurance, then it is, missing something that actually should now be part of good corporate governance?
The clear answer is yes. So we do put that in place if it's not in place already, right, post-investment.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much for those opening remarks. They're really interesting. I've got a few questions that I am going to ask both of you. And as I say, we'll try and look at quite a few angles of all the questions we've been looking at. And Esther, I know if the audience have got questions, they can send them in too. But Yuval, going back to you, I mean, your presentation, AI, is often, touted as the thing that is going to change the world, it's going to carry on changing the world, it's going to have a massive impact on, the jobs market and how we live our lives. One thing that occurred to me during your presentation is if malicious actors were really determined actually to stop AI's march and to really limit what it can do, my takeaway from your presentation is that actually they could really disrupt it quite easily. I mean, taking the film on the stop signs, you read a lot about, the automated car market, the self-driving car market will soon be here. That is going to have massive ramifications, for example, on the car insurance industry, lots of issues like that. But if it's as simple as, putting a piece of film over a stop sign, you can almost stop self-driving cars. Is AI actually really vulnerable to human intervention and sabotage?
Unfortunately, yes, but we won't be able to stop the usage and the deployment of AI. I think that there were attempts in the past to stop different technological trends, and eventually it failed. In the case of AI, since it manages to automate many processes and increase productivity in many fields, I don't believe that anybody will stop AI. What we really need to do is to be aware that AI should not be naive. It should be robust. And what the researchers all over the world are working today is how to make AI algorithms dramatically more robust. I'll give you an example. In a different research, we managed to show that in an advertisement on a digital billboard close to the road, if you place in the advertisement a stop sign for 0.1 second, the car will stop. Now, obviously, a human being will never stop because it sees that it is a digital billboard and the stop sign appeared on a digital billboard. So in this case, what we need to do is to improve dramatically the robustness of the AI algorithm to understand the context where it sees the stop sign. It doesn't make sense that the stop sign will appear on the digital billboard. By the way, one of the means that Tesla did to stop such attacks, they incorporated in their AI system information about where every stop sign is supposed to be. So they're not relying only on the vision. They also know that actually in a specific area, a stop sign is supposed to be. So if you put it on a digital billboard, they will not stop. So you see, there are ways how to make the AI algorithm dramatically more robust. And today, we at BGU, we got a mandate from the government, we got $1.5 million to build an AI security lab, AI testing lab, to check the robustness and to recommend different companies that they bring their AI algorithm to recommend them how to make their AI algorithm more robust. So this is the direction that we should go.
Right. And David, from your point of view, just building on that, if you were thinking about investing in a company that really specialized in AI and maybe had some AI system that it thought was going to be revolutionary, what kind of due diligence would you do on that company? Would you come to someone like Yuval to actually conduct, if you like, external tests on the quality of the AI? Because obviously, if you're investing a large amount of money in a system that actually has some vulnerability in that if that vulnerability is exploited, could actually result in a massive liability. Obviously, you're not going to invest in the company. So how do you go about managing that risk?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we'd love to work with Yuval on these type of investment opportunities. What we do for every investment opportunities, of course, that we run our typical processes on the commercial side, on the legal side, accounting and tax, do lots of customer calls to understand how customers interact with the platform, how they use it, how satisfied they are with the platform, and so on. That gives us a lot of comfort with regards to the actual use cases and the longevity of those customers. But especially when it comes to something like AI, it's absolutely necessary to do a deep technology diligence, and someone like Yuval would be a phenomenal partner for doing that.
Okay. And Yuval, coming back to you, we've talked a bit about some of the experiments you've done to test AI. We're focusing today, to an extent on financial institutions and the AI that they use. In terms of cyber attacks that you have seen in that sector, what are some of the recent attacks you've seen? Are there particular vulnerabilities that financial institutions have that you think they should be particularly aware of, or supplementing their cyber defenses in relation to certain issues?
Look, first of all, when we talk about AI and financial institutions, there is an issue of a cyber attack that will try to attack the AI component of the cyber defense systems. That's one aspect. And there is the usage of AI for the operations of the financial institutions. That's the different aspect. Now, just to focus on the other one, because I didn't mention it during my presentation. First of all, financial institutions are faced also on two other types of, I would call it attacks against the AI system, which relates to, first of all, to checking whether their AI system includes a bias. And here, the damage is that there is a huge damage to the reputation of the bank. If somebody, for example, will be able to prove, like it happened in several cases in the United States, that the credit score for a female and a male with the same characteristics is different, then there is a problem. And today, an attacker, what do we mean an attacker? Somebody that wants to humiliate the financial institution can theoretically check it and identify it by applying different requests to the bank and identify that actually the AI algorithm is biased. This is not an attack, but it's eventually an attack against the reputation of the bank. Secondly, there is an issue of privacy attacks against machine learning models. In a privacy attack, if somebody can prove that his data was used to induce a model, it can also damage the reputation of the company that operates the model. So when we are working on testing AI algorithm in general, we are checking the robustness, like I gave the example before, but we also concerned about checking the bias of the algorithm and checking the chances that somebody will be able to leak from the AI model information that will also may followed by a lawsuit against the financial institution.
But and forgive my ignorance, isn't the whole point of AI that it actually starts learning by itself? So if an algorithm is coming up with results that would tend to suggest a bias, to what extent can the organization say, well, actually the whole point of AI is that it can make decisions better than a human can? And therefore we should rely upon the quality of the decisions that it is making, provided that, the way you programmed it doesn't contain any apparent bias. How would you respond to that? Because presumably the end result of this is, and the whole reason that AI is becoming more popular, is because the quality of the output, theoretically, is much higher and more consistent than if a human would do it.
Look, I agree with you. First of all, we are human beings. We have a bias as well. But there is an issue with AI. What we are maybe tolerant when it relates to human judgment, we are not tolerant when it relates to a machine judgment. And currently what we are doing when we are detecting a bias, we are recommending the user of the system how to retrain the model in order to remove the bias. Give you an extreme example. In the case of a car, autonomous car, definitely if there is an Afro-American, it will be more difficult to identify him than, let's say, Caucasian, because of the color at night. So one way is to run over some Caucasian from time to time to balance the chances, but we need to find other ways how to fix the algorithm. So we need to do it because people will not agree to a bias in an AI algorithm. And that's a huge challenge. For example, the chances of an Afro-American to be shot by a policeman is much higher than a Caucasian in the United States. Obviously, it's because there are more criminals objectively, which are Afro-American than Caucasian, but nobody will agree to a situation that the policeman will shoot more Afro-American just because they are Black. So we definitely need to find a way how to fix the algorithms. And actually what we are doing when we are checking the algorithm, we are recommending how to change, for example, the training set, so the algorithm will not be biased with related to a sensitive feature. And sensitive could be a gender, age, ethnicity. These are actually type of things that we don't want the algorithm to be biased. Especially it's very, very relevant to the financial institutions.
And how easy is it to predict the output of an algorithm? Are companies often surprised at, when they sort of press the go button? Are they surprised at how the algorithm sort of develops, how it sort of learns from experience, or actually is it usually fairly predictable how an algorithm is going to develop and what the output's going to be?
It's not easy. Sometimes today we're trying to use to add to every machine learning algorithm an explainable AI component in order for the AI algorithm to explain why it arrived to a specific decision. This is a huge trend today, because when you want to use an AI, it looks like a black box, and it gives you a specific decision, and the decision has some repercussions, especially if there is a mistake or especially if there is a lawsuit, and you want to justify for yourself why you followed the advice of the AI algorithm. But today, in many, many cases, we want the AI algorithm to include an explainable AI component that will tell us, look, I decided not to give a loan to this person because I saw that many people that are living in this neighborhood usually are not returning the loan. So this is the reason why I arrived to this conclusion.
And we've had a question, which is, and it's one for you, Yuval. The question is, to what extent do you involve neuroscience and behavioral science to train your algorithms?
Can you repeat, please?
Yes, to what extent do you involve neuroscience and behavioral science when programming an algorithm?
Look, first of all, the approach for training algorithms is different when you talk to data scientists and neuroscientists. Neuroscientists are trying to some extent, develop systems that are mimicking somehow the human being way of processing data. While data scientists really do not care. They just want to have an algorithm that gives you a good result. I really believe that in some cases, we need to combine the two approaches together in order to get a system that is more humane from some extent.
David, turning to you, sort of on the investment side, are there particular things you look for when investing in cybersecurity technologies? For example, are there particular bits of the market that you think really lend themselves to AI and sort of cyber solutions that you think, in 5-10 years' time, you really want to have got into those areas now?
Yeah, for sure. So when we look at the market, there are, of course, certain sectors that have been around for a long time and where it's really difficult to innovate, like endpoint security, email security, these type of things where we probably have reached maturity. Then there are other newer problems. And one of them, if we take the autonomous car example, are connected devices, right? And this may be something as big as a car, it may be a coffee machine, maybe a fridge, it may just be an e-scooter out there in the street. And there are lots of issues around cybersecurity for connected devices. So this is a new field that requires new solutions. So we're looking for solutions in cybersecurity to problems that have arisen over the last couple of years and where there's no good or no mature solution yet. Another good example is you see more and more attacks, and very sophisticated ones, on infrastructure assets, for example. And some of these may be government-owned, but a lot of these may be corporate infrastructure assets. And that's a huge problem for anyone out there as well, even if you're not an owner of such infrastructure assets. So these are very specific problems. And what we're then trying to overlay this with is how big are those markets? So if those markets are small because they're so specialized, then these are not markets that we would be investing in. But if these markets address a very big problem with a very big TAM, then this is something that we get very interested in and where we spend our time. So what we do on a continuous basis is try to find those innovative areas of cybersecurity that actually have the potential to have a big TAM.
And do you find you spend a lot of the time looking at potential investments that actually you conclude, I'm not going to work in the long term? I mean, how easy is it for you when you spot an investment, you think, yes, that is one worth making? Or are there often very, very fine judgment calls and it's difficult ultimately to make your final decision?
So I think you can diligence an investment extremely well prior to making that investment. And that goes to actually spending quite some time with the product itself. We're very product focused. And if the product really addresses the needs and the pain points out there, then we want to be all over this. At the same time, we want to understand what do other people do in that segment. So we will always talk to other similar companies out there to understand what solution do they offer and how does it differ? Is it better? Is it worse? And then come to a conclusion around purely from a product perspective, who's got the best product out there? And then the overlay to that is management, because at the end of the day, management executes, and a great execution with a slightly inferior product may beat mediocre execution with a better product, right? So these are the judgment calls that you're referring to that we need to make. But once you've made a number of customer calls, once you've understood the use cases, you've understood the technology and the product, and you've spent time with the team, all those pieces of the puzzle come together nicely, and you come to a very clear picture. And very often these are not marginal judgment calls, but very often the picture emerges in such a way that it's a very clear, high conviction yes or no.
Yep. Excellent. Thank you for that. Yuval, coming back to you, we talked earlier about sort of cyber attacks and how AI may be corrupted by malicious actors. What can companies, financial institutions do to protect themselves? Are there certain simple steps that they can take? And is it ever possible to be fully protected against a malicious actor?
First of all, unfortunately, there are no ways to be fully protected. I believe that today, the biggest challenge is that a lot of know-how of cybersecurity, about cybersecurity attacks, is leaking from governments to, let's call it, to the cyber criminal sector. That's what we are seeing today, because eventually state actors can accomplish whatever they want. It's really impossible to stop attacks by state actors. We saw it in Ukraine. We can see it everywhere, all over the world. I'm telling you, no government can stop cyber attacks from another government, and definitely no, let's say, non-governmental institution can cope with another government capabilities. It's almost impossible. So really what is extremely important, in my opinion, for financial institutions and any other institutions to do is to have a very, very clear plan how to recover once such an attack takes place. First of all, to try to detect it as early as possible. And secondly, to have a plan how to recover and not to look completely confused when it's happening. Because it can happen. It can happen. It's impossible to stop it. And really, I don't want to be in the role of a CISO today in a big organization. Because really, it doesn't have the tools and the means to stop an attack, especially if it's being done by another government or if it's being done by veterans that left, for example, Ukraine government or Russian government and went to the private sector to make some money. They are coming with state-art capabilities. You can't stop them. And their goal is to make money. So you need to find a way how to recover as fast as possible.
And how do attackers tend to get in? Because is it, in my experience, certainly the attacks that I've been involved in, the vast majority, actually the malicious actors get in by relying essentially on human fallibility, human error. Somebody clicking on an attachment to an email they shouldn't have clicked on. In your experience, what sort of percentage relies on those really, if you like, basic ways to get into a system? And what percentage are sort of so advanced that actually they bypass humans completely and manage to find a way into the system?
It's a very good question. Look, we are talking today about cyber attack that may involve the AI component. But today we don't see many such attacks. And the reason is exactly because of your point. Today, the biggest problem in many organizations is what is called security hygiene. Not very sophisticated vulnerabilities that are being exploited by attackers. Today, many organizations do not configure their network correctly, do not configure their security tools correctly. And attackers knows how to compromise this, let's say, call it misconfiguration or the bad security hygiene of an organization. The reason that I'm telling you that, because I talked to a CEO of a, I cannot tell the name of the company, of a cybersecurity company, and I was sure that, and they are focusing on detecting attack graphs in organizations. It's attack passes from the entry point to the organization until a very sophisticated asset. And I had in mind, that are going to look for vulnerabilities that are being maybe exploited by an attacker. And he told me, look, when we are going to a new customer, we discovered 95% of the problems are simple security hygienes. Weak passwords, misconfiguration of a firewall, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, since attackers are aware about this type of mistakes, they are looking for companies that their security hygiene is lower, and they are attacking them. And this is first of all. Secondly, please be aware, a cyber attack, the infrastructure of a cyber attack, if it's being caught, then, or brought to the attention of a security company, then somebody is going to patch the software tool or is going to reconfigure the security tool to be able to stop the attack. So from the point of view of the attacker, it's a disaster if their tools are actually being detected, because then they can neutralize forever. I gave the analogy in some of my research, some of my lectures, that there is a huge difference between a cruise missile and a cyber attack tool. Because a cruise missile you can reuse, and shoot it again and again and again, and it's going to work. But a cyber attack, once it's going to be caught by the other side, you cannot reuse it. So, given what I just said, cyber attackers will try to go to a victim that the chance that it is going to catch them is the lowest, in order to be able to reuse the same attack methodology on another victim.
Interesting. And I would like, we've got a few minutes left. I'd like to go through some of the audience questions. So David, one for you. What can you say about the academic business nexus in Israel within the tech sector? Where is it strong and where is it weak in your experience?
I've probably had less exposure to the academic part of the market in Israel, more to the business part. But in general, what we're seeing is that in cybersecurity, Israel probably has about 70% of the global market cap of interesting companies out there. So being based or founded in Israel as a cybersecurity software business is a great thing. There are two key reasons for that. One clearly is the military, and units such as 8200 and others, of course, very famous for having brought out some great cybersecurity technologists. And then, of course, Israel also has a great network of universities such as BGU that really prepare people for life post-university in the military and then beyond in the corporate world. So all this to say, I think if you have a 70% market share, then you're doing something right.
Great. And you've got a question for you about BGU. The question is, we know BGU has outstanding capabilities in the area of cybersecurity. Is it exporting its expertise to companies and markets outside of Israel?
Yes, many companies, worldwide companies are approaching us. Recently, for example, Fujitsu established an satellite excellence center focusing on AI security in BGU. We are working directly with the Fujitsu labs focusing on cybersecurity in Japan, doing research for them. So many international companies are coming to BGU. And once we are finding that we have a common interest, because our interest is to work on the state-of-the-art cybersecurity issues. For example, in the case of Fujitsu, they offer us to work on AI security, which is a topic that we are seeing that is the most important today. And so the answer is yes, many international companies are coming to us. We are establishing either small projects or dedicated labs. Today we have a dedicated lab for Fujitsu, for Deutsche Telekom. We have a continuous cooperation, so I could call it like a lab for NEC. And there are two other big companies that are in the process of establishing big labs inside BGU. Actually, currently the major challenge for us is to find the students for all these cooperations.
Oh. I'll tell my daughters that's what they need to get into. David, sort of wide-ranging question for you. You know, what if you had to sum up sort of 2 or 3 key lessons you've learned from all your many years of investing in all sorts of different tech companies? What would they be? What are your sort of key takeaways, if you like?
Yeah, so I think one is a more general lesson, and then 2 probably apply a lot more to AI and cybersecurity than others. The more general lesson is whenever there are issues, it tends to be people issues. So when we spend time with companies, we spend a lot of time with the founders and senior management, and post-investment, we always spend a lot of time making sure that we hire the right people in order to scale the business. So it's really a people's business, and the best exits have been those where the team has been incredibly strong. I think that's upfront. I think what's very relevant for AI and cybersecurity is 2 things that are probably more relevant in that sector than in others. One is very small nuances and differences and errors in the product can have a massive impact. Whilst if you look at a BI tool or you look at a CRM software business, very small differences have no impact on the performance of that respective software piece. So, but in AI and cybersecurity software, that is of course a massive difference. So therefore, that goes to making sure that the product is 100% perfect and not 80, 90, or 95%. And then the second thing is what we've seen in cybersecurity is that in order to commercialize a technology and make it really sizable, you need to be successful in the partner channel. And not just on the direct sales side of things, but really acquiring the right partner, nurturing them, gold plating to them in order for them to go out and sell your products, and making it as easy as possible for people to understand what you do and to also communicate that to their respective customers. So be it MSSPs, be it some of the large businesses, for example, in automotive or other sectors, So that often determines the success of a company.
And Yuval, final question for you very quickly. Can companies ever stop hackers? You talked about state-sponsored hacking and that can't be stopped. So leaving that aside, will we ever get to the stage, do you think, where we are able to stop the professional criminal gangs or the people in their garage who want to, just disrupt companies? Will we ever develop defense systems that can stop those kind of people?
No, I don't believe that we will be able to develop a defense system that will be bulletproof and will not allow any attacker to enter into an organization. What we can do is to try to raise the cost of the attack to an extent that the attacker is going to move to another organization and is not going to attack us. But completely to eliminate every cyber attack, there is no chance for that, in my opinion.
Thank you. Esther, shall I hand over to you?
Okay, I think if it was up to me, this would go on for another hour, but the time has come to wrap it up. First of all, I want to thank you, Lawson, for conducting an excellent and dynamic session. You're hired on our side. Thank you, David Klein, for bringing all your insights into the business and venture capital world and investing in the kind of companies that you feel will succeed. And Professor Yuval Elovici, the head of our cyber labs at BGU, for a stimulating discussion on what's ahead. We're not going to stop the hackers, but how can we respond, as you said so eloquently. Thank you to White and Case for being our partners on this event. Gideon Harbor and Berger are the trustees of the Ben-Gurion University Foundation in the United Kingdom. And this is the first in our series of Academia Meets Industry, how the research and the continuum eventually leading to the groundbreaking innovations that are being adopted by governments and multinationals all over the world. If you come away with nothing tonight, and I think you've come away with a lot, perhaps it's understanding the learning that there's this little city in the southern part of Israel called Be'er Sheva, which has been cited as the cyber capital of Israel on its way to becoming the cyber capital of the world, with Israel's military, the vaulted 8200 unit moving down there, with the cyber directorate having headquarters down there, multinationals, in addition to the one that Yuval mentioned, such as Dell EMC, and many others establishing a place there because of the unique advantages provided there. So we invite you all to come and visit at CyberBGU. Just a little glimpse of what's ahead, and we encourage you post-webinar. We'll be sending out a follow-up to contact us. Some of the exciting, just a glimpse of what's going on at CyberBGU, everything from new biohacking techniques, identifying cyber attackers who are trying to dupe DNA scientists into creating dangerous viruses and toxins, to something they're going to present in Singapore at the Black Hat Conference coming up on new surveillance techniques, which will allow anyone with an off-the-shelf equipment to eavesdrop on conversations if they can merely find a line of sight through a window to reflect, to provide a variety of reflective objects in the room. So sounds science fiction-like, but it's actually happening among with many other innovations. And we began on time, we started on time. Thank you all for an extraordinary event, and we're looking forward to inviting you to the next one. Have a good night and be safe in the UK, in Israel.